It's 1918, months after the end of World War I, and a tall, serious man is in an office doing a job interview to work as a lightkeeper at an island off the coast of Australia, called Janus Rock. This man is a former soldier, Tom Sherborne, and he has survivor's guilt. After years fighting in war and becoming a hero, he still doesn't understand why out of all the soldiers, he was the one still alive. With so many bad thoughts plaguing his mind, he wants to move to a quiet and peaceful place so that he can reflect on his life, and the life of a lightkeeper seems perfect. Though he's single and has no children, which would have been helpful for the lightkeeper job, he promises he will be capable of doing what needs to be done by himself. Although the interviewer is a bit skeptical, Tom ends up getting the job, and 2 days later, he arrives at Port Partijus, the town across the ocean to Janus Rock. Tom isn't excited or sad, he's just overall neutral about his new life. The weather is cloudy and bleak in Port Partijus. The town is surrounded by the sea, with a very small population that is financially dependent on the lighthouse. As he walks into town, holding his baggage, he sees a girl wearing a white dress throwing food to the seagulls. The girl notices him and smiles. She is quite pretty and young. Tom stares at her for some time but continues on his way towards an inn he's staying at. Later on that day, he goes to a meeting with the men responsible for the lighthouse. One of the men has a daughter, Isabel Gracemark, the same girl that Tom saw when he first arrived in town, and she is also at the meeting with her parents. Isabel is cheeky and seems like a happy-go-lucky kind of girl. During dinner, Tom learns some interesting news. The previous lightkeeper had to temporarily retire because he was hallucinating, probably because of the isolation and grief of losing his wife. As he hears this piece of information, Tom doesn't show any emotion on his face. He's pretty stoic and not worried that the same is going to happen to him. After fighting in a war, he was numb to almost anything, no matter how tragic or awful it sounds. He also doubts anything like cabin fever is going to happen to him. It's quite the opposite. He's hopeful that being alone is going to help him overcome his growing guilt. He leaves to the lighthouse by boat. There, he will stay for 6 months with no contact whatsoever with anyone, unless something important happens. The view from the lighthouse is the great expansion of the ocean. Tom stares at it with tears in his eyes, probably remembering his past life. There is a small cabin at the foot of the hill where the lighthouse is, which is where Tom is going to reside for the next couple of months. His days are pretty silent and uneventful. He works every day at the lighthouse and also takes care of the cabin, fixing broken things and caring for the animals and garden. The days go by in a silent, contemplative pace. He works and does chores, sometimes he gets emotional and prays for forgiveness. 3 months later, he's called back to the land because the previous lightkeeper has unalived himself, which means that his temporary position is now permanent. He's offered a 3-year contract, and accepts it. Later, he stops by the Gracemark's residence to have lunch, but what he really wants is to see Isabel again. During lunch, when Isabel's mother asks what Tom's plans before he returns to Janus are, Isabel interrupts before he can answer to say he offered to take her on a picnic. Tom didn't offer anything, but he also doesn't rebuke her claim. During their date, Isabel tries to learn more about Tom, but he's a quiet and serious man who barely speaks unless it's necessary. She tells him about herself, that she used to have 2 brothers but they died in the war. Tom says he spent 4 years in the war and he has no connection with his remaining relative, his father. Their relationship was never good, and Tom didn't feel the need to have anything to do with him. They continue talking until Isabel asks him to take her with him to see the lighthouse, but he can't because the only woman that can go there is the keeper's wife. Not to be dissuaded, Isabel boldly tells Tom to propose to her then. Tom thinks she's joking and calls her crazy for wanting to marry a man like him. Moments later, he bids her goodbye and promises to write to her. For the next couple of months, they exchange many letters in which they declare their love for each other and their wishes to be together. Tom opens up about himself letter after letter, and that makes Isabel fall for him even more. Finally, after so many love letters, Tom offers Isabel to come stay with him at the lighthouse, and promises he will always love and cherish her while being her husband. Isabel can't contain her happiness, and she starts planning their wedding for the next time Tom comes back to land. Their wedding ceremony is small and lovely. They are both very happy and excited for their future, even austere Tom. It's time to move back to the lighthouse, and Isabel is enchanted. It's a beautiful place to stay in, though it is isolated from the rest of the world. She easily settles in her new routine with Tom, and after some time together, she gets pregnant. The couple is ecstatic, especially Isabel. It's her dream to have children, so she's looking forward to it. Moving on, one day a heavy storm approaches and Tom needs to stay at the lighthouse. Isabel is left alone at the house, and at some point in the evening, she feels a bad cramp on her stomach. She can't communicate with Tom, but even if she could, it would have been too late. She's having a miscarriage. Isabel tries calling out to him, and in her desperation, she goes out in the storm to go up the lighthouse. The wind is howling and rain is pouring, so it's almost impossible for Tom to hear her screams. It's only next day, when he's going back to the house, that he opens the door of the lighthouse and sees Isabel lying down on the floor, her nightdress bloodied. Tom is scared to death and takes her back to the house. Later, they do a small funeral to their unborn baby, and Tom reassures Isabel that it isn't her fault. This experience changes Isabel, though. She's sad and angry at herself for losing the baby, and she takes it out on Tom. She even refuses to see a doctor. Tom isn't about to give up on his wife, though. He hires a person to fix the piano in the house as a surprise for Isabel, and she loves it. Things between them get better again, and it's not long before Isabel is pregnant again. She is months in her pregnancy when she feels the labor cramps again. She pleads to not lose another child, to no avail. Unfortunately, she loses the baby, and this time there's no recovery for her mental state. Days go by, with Isabel depressed and Tom trying to move on with their life. One day, he sees a boat in the middle of the ocean, and they both run towards it. Inside the boat, there's a wailing baby and the body of a man. The baby is a girl, and Isabel is instantly taken by her. Tom wants to call for a boat to take the man's body away and find out who the baby belongs to, but Isabel wants to keep her for a while. Tom is divided in his opinions, because he has to report the missing boat, but Isabel is finally happy with the baby. Isabel begs him not to report anything so that they can keep the baby and pretend she delivered early. No one knew that she had 2 miscarriages. She was too embarrassed to tell anyone. Tom eventually accepts, albeit begrudgingly. He buries the man's body and makes up a lie to report that the man arrived at the island in bad health and died. No mention of a baby with him. They name the little girl Lucy and tell everyone that she's their baby. Isabel is back to her old self, happy and giddy, while Tom has a heavy conscience. As the months pass, Lucy grows to be a healthy, cute baby, who instantly charms everyone she's in contact with. They go back to Port Partijus to visit and introduce Lucy to her grandparents. She's also going to be baptized, but the day they go to the church, the vicar isn't there. Tom starts to wander around the church's cemetery while they wait, and he distantly sees a woman in black praying in front of a tomb. He's curious as to who she's praying to, so when she leaves, he goes to the tomb. As the saying goes, curiosity killed the cat, and Tom is shocked when he sees the names on the tomb. A father and baby daughter, called Grace Helen, lost to the sea on the day before Tom found Lucy's boat. He can't believe in what he's seeing and starts crying. A mother was without her daughter because of their lie. His conscience weighs tons now, and for the rest of the day, he is standoffish and silent. When they go back to the lighthouse, he decides to send a letter to the baby's mother, Hannah, saying that her daughter is being taken care of and is well. He finishes the letter asking her to pray for him. When Hannah receives the letter, she goes to the police and asks them to look for her daughter. Then, her father, a wealthy man, doubles the prize for anyone who finds out where baby Grace is. Now she knows that not only her baby is alive but someone has her. She is determined to discover where she is. 4 years later, Lucy is already a big girl. She loves her parents, and her parents love her. They are a beautiful family. A celebration of the 40th birthday of the lighthouse arrives, and there Tom sees Hannah again. Once more, he's reminded of what he has done. Unbeknown to them, Isabel and Hannah are introduced to each other. At one point, Hannah abruptly leaves, and her sister, Gwen, explains her behavior to Isabel and Tom. She tells them that Hannah lost her husband and daughter in the sea, and Isabel is shocked. She gives Lucy to Tom and runs away feeling bad. Next day, Tom tries to reason with her that they need to tell the truth about Lucy, but Isabel thinks it's not going to be good for Lucy to know something like that. Still, Tom's conscience makes him send a little toy that came with Lucy to Hannah. The family goes back to the lighthouse, with the secret waiting more than ever. Meanwhile, Hannah gives the toy to the investigator and they take pictures of it to put around town. One man who knows Lucy recognizes the toy and tells the police. A week later, the police go to the lighthouse to speak to Tom and Isabel. Tom instructs Isabel to tell them that it was his idea and he forced her to do it. Isabel is distraught and afraid she's going to lose Lucy. The police interrogate them, and Tom shows them where Hannah's husband's body is buried. Later, Tom is detained and they go back to Port Partijus. The police take Lucy forcibly from Isabel so she can be returned to Hannah, and Lucy screams and cries. When Tom is interrogated, the police ask if he killed Lucy's biological father, to which he stoically replies he didn't. He suggests that if they don't believe him, to ask Isabel. They want to charge him for murder. Isabel is in no condition to answer any questions. She is desperate that they took her daughter away from her, and that Tom betrayed her by sending things to Hannah. She tells her mother that she will never forgive him, and when he sends her a letter, she refuses to open it. Meanwhile, Lucy wants to go back home to her parents, and Hannah tries to explain that she is actually her daughter, Grace. The little girl refuses to accept it and tries to escape Hannah. One day, Isabel enters a store and sees Lucy. The girl instantly runs and hugs her while Hannah watches. Lucy doesn't want to go back with Hannah, so Hannah rips Lucy away from Isabel. Later that day, Hannah goes to prison to ask Tom questions. She asks why he did what he said he did. Tom replies that he's sorry and pleads for her to leave Isabel alone because she was forced by him. Hannah doesn't say anything back and leaves. In the following scene, Hannah is serving dinner and she calls Lucy, but she doesn't come. She searches for her, thinking she's hiding, but when she can't find her, she realizes that the girl has run away. The police go to Isabel's parents' house to see if Lucy is with her, but she isn't. A search party is sent to look for her and they find her sleeping by the shore. She tried to go back home to Janis Island. Before they found her, Hannah had promised that she would do what was right for Lucy when she was found and put her in first place. She realized that Lucy needed her parents, not her. With her mind made, she goes to Isabel's house the next day and tells her that she's willing to give up on Lucy if Isabel testifies against her husband. Isabel is conflicted. She loved Lucy so much that she would be able to sacrifice anything. But she also loved Tom, even if she felt angry at him for what he had done. Before she makes a decision, she goes back to her room and grabs the letter Tom sent her. There he asks for her forgiveness and tells her that he did what he did because he couldn't continue on with the weight of more guilt on his shoulders. He thanks her for the time they spent together and that he's grateful she loved him, a man with so many faults. He's ready to face his sentence. He sees it as a way to atone for his sins of the war, and the fact that out of so many other men who died, he was chosen to stay alive. Isabel cries as she reads her husband's last letter and decides she can't let him go. At this time, Tom is already being transported to the capital so that he can be judged for murder. Isabel runs after him, but when Tom sees her, he asks the captain of the boat to cast it off before she gets to him. Isabel manages to get to him and hugs him. She starts mumbling that it's not true and Tom tries to stop her from confessing. Still, Isabel doesn't think it's right for Tom to take the fall for her mistakes and tells the police it was all her idea, and that she told him to bury Lucy's father and keep her with them as their daughter. The police hear and tell Hannah later. She's shocked that it was Isabel's idea all along, and when she asks what is going to happen to the couple, the police say that they will go to jail. Hannah then decides that she'll testify in their favor because she wants to give Lucy her parents back and she is willing to forgive them. When Isabel and Tom go to jail, Lucy stays with Hannah and they build a good relationship, like mother and daughter. Lucy is still young, so it won't be a problem for her to get used to her new life. More than 20 years later, Isabel and Tom are older and Isabel is on her deathbed. They stay in a farmhouse, away from everything and everyone. They never had any more children, and Lucy stayed with Hannah after they left jail. They lost contact, and the couple moved on with their life, though Isabel never stopped talking and thinking about Lucy. One day, a car stops by their property. Tom greets the person, a blonde, smiling woman who asks if she's at Tom and Isabel's property. When Tom says yes, she introduces herself as Lucy Grace Ruthford. They're Lucy. She's now an adult and has recently become a mother. Her baby's name is Christopher. Lucy thanks Tom for saving and taking care of her when she was a baby, and that she couldn't come sooner to visit. It's then that we find out that Isabel passed away, but she left a letter for Lucy, as if she knew one day she would return. In the letter, Isabel tells Lucy that she promised she would stay away from her, and she kept her promise. She thanks Lucy for allowing them to be part of her life, however briefly it was, and that the thought that she was well taken care of and happy comforted her. At the end of the letter, Lucy asks if she and her son could come back to visit him. When she leaves, she gives Tom a hug. In the last scene, we see Tom watching the sunset with a peaceful expression. He also outlived his wife, but now he doesn't feel guilty about it.